And now, live in studio, cutting through your typical media nonsense and offering you a rational and unbiased perspective on current events and life in Tampa Bay. He's a successful entrepreneur, published author, top listing agent, a real estate and finance expert that goes to bat for you every day as a consumer advocate. Your host and the consumer quarterback, Brandon Rhymes.
Yes, you're listening to the Consumer Quarterback Show with your host, Brandon Rhymes. Brandon is out today, so in the chair today is a backup quarterback, James DeJerome. Still committed to giving you the same quality program we always do. We are about the consumers on this program. It's a consumer advocacy program. Brandon has built it that way in that we want to make sure that you spend your money wisely. We're going to give you some tips, some knowledge as a way of increasing your purchasing power in the marketplace. To that end, I've assembled some great partners today. We're going to talk about a few stories that we've got, a feel-good story like we always do to try to inject some positivity into your day. I've assembled my same staff. We've got D, our intern back there. Jose is on the board today for Salem, help keeping us good on AM 1380. Rob is our tech from WeBeam, so if you want to check out the TV side, WeBeam TV always has the Consumer Quarterback Show on, or you can go to bingenetworks.tv and search for the Consumer Quarterback Show. Any way you want to find us, we're there. We've got some great sponsors. Lucky Dill is one of our sponsors. Brandon always talks about going to the Lucky Dill. I love it over there. I'm there all the time, and I would encourage everyone out there to give it a shot. The sandwiches are unbelievable, and I'm a big sandwich guy, so I'm always eating sandwiches over there. But they've got the menus, got everything you can think of. So anything that you want to stop by, think of a deli, try the Lucky Dill for me. It's really a special place. I think you'll enjoy it a lot. We got some partners here in the studio for you today. As always, we're heavy on the real estate side. We're going to try to find some ways to help save you money and make you a little more powerful in the marketplace. Scott Kepler, Mortgage Approval Group. Welcome in, Scott.
Thanks. It's always good to be here. Looking forward to sharing some stories and uncovering some mysteries and hopefully answering some questions for everybody.
One thing I love about Scott is he's a broker. So it's not just his deal and he's just going to try to sell you his product. He knows exactly what this area is about, and he's been in this market for a long time. And he's got different products custom fit for a person. So you might see something that another lender could not handle.
Oh, absolutely. And especially if you're dealing with a bank, a lot of times they have what we call the vanilla products. Mm-hmm. It's the top tier.
Right.
Everybody can do it loan, the standard 30-year.
And one size does not fit all, right?
Absolutely not, Everybody's situation's a little different. Everybody's goals are a little different, and those are all things that we like to factor in. It's not just the credit score. Let's have a conversation so we can help you make a good short-term and long-term decision based on what your financial needs are and what your goals are.
Absolutely. It's not just knowledge of what products are available. It's the marketplace. It's the person. It's the fact that Scott's been in the business a long time and he can kind of see down the road a little bit so that you might be getting into a property that he sees a problem in 10 years that you don't see. That's why you need somebody with knowledge on your side.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you want to make sure that you're making an informed decision. I mean, it's your finances at the end of the day.
Right.
I'll give people the option to look at different things. Here's the best short-term option for you. Here's the best long-term option. Here's the best kind of in-between.
We talk all the time about folks that aren't even aware of what's out there. It used to be standard 30 years, 20% down, and that's what everyone thought it was.
Right, exactly. I mean, we've got loans with as little as 3% down. Some very flexible terms with FHA with 3.5% down. Of course, the veterans have the 100% financing.
We're going to get a little bit of that in just a minute. I've got Richard Alexander's here. Richard Alexander from Alexander Law always brings us some knowledge and tells us about any latest legal changes or any legislation that's on the horizon. What's new in your world, Richard?
Thanks, James, man. This is the best part of the time for me. I love doing the show. Love everything about it, man. You and Brandon are just,
I appreciate
consummate professionals.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I know that you're a teacher as well.
I've been an educator for, going on almost 20 years, coming close.
So we were talking a little bit about, before the show, just about students and why they get into law and different things that might motivate somebody out there. You get questions all the time. Kids think they already know everything because they've seen Law & Order or some of these shows on TV. Is that right?
Well, one of the questions I do get asked a lot by students is, can you name any movies or TV series that are a lot like the practice of law? And I haven't seen one yet. I will tell you this. I've had a lot of law enforcement officers that have told me Law & Order gets it pretty close. But from the law enforcement perspective, they said Law & Order gets it they're really good.
There's so many. Think about 12 Angry Men or all the different things that deal with the court systems going back in the history of cinema. There's so many movies and TV shows that people really think they know the inside of what happened, or they know how to attack things because they saw a TV or a movie.
Yeah, I think the movie, they have to do the Hollywood version of it. The building up the drama.
Right. The characters have to feel a certain way.
Yeah, absolutely. They cut a lot of corners because it's not glamorous, and everybody wants to see the glamour, the drama, the behind the scenes. They want to see the conflict in the courtroom, and that just doesn't happen. I mean, it's incredibly infrequently something like that happens in real life.
Right. It's about doing your study and having case law on your side and really doing research.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that part is true, but I'll tell you the little things that people don't know a lot about. Because it's just not, again, it's not glamorous, but I can't tell you how much typing I do. Really, because I'm preparing the motions.
The documents.
And I'm the one typing away at, 35, 40 words a minute.
Right.
And, that's really time consuming. And, but who wants to see that in a TV series or a movie? Nobody cares about that.
It's not as compelling.
Yeah. Right. But, yeah, a lot of my work is, doing the research and typing.
Okay. Well, we're going to get back and talk a little bit about Richard, about his teaching, and a little bit about the law and what he's seen a little over there at Alexander Law. But I want to get back to Scott because we have a bunch of people in the Bay that are renting, and I've heard this nightmare where I can't even find a rental property. I find one, and I go back in a week, it's gone. The scarcity is starting to impact people a little bit.
Absolutely. We've got a good amount of inventory available right now as far as the number of houses that are for sale, which is great because it's the hot time of the year for our housing market. But, the rental properties are getting more and more expensive. The average rent, I think, in the Tampa Bay area for, a one bedroom that's like 700 square feet is, $900 or something.
And when you're talking about first and last and a deposit, that money may not be that far off a down payment for something that Scott can do for you.
Because you figure a lot of times a rental payment's going to be more than what the mortgage payment would be.
Yeah.
Almost, I would say 90% of the time, unless you happen to be someplace for a long time. But if you add up the first, last, and security deposit, it almost always comes up to close to the 3% that you're going to need to put down.
Yeah, it's a barrier in your mind when you think, I just can't do it. I don't have the down payment, or my credit's not good enough. Really, until you run it and check it with Scott, you really don't know what position you're in and what you're able to do.
Right, exactly. And that's where our team comes in because, even if you're not ready credit-wise, let's say there's some blemishes that need to, get taken care of or things that need to get attended to or, sometimes I have people that, don't understand credit and they may only have one or two things on their credit and they need a little bit more.
And it's something they could improve without going too far.
Exactly. And we can give them that advice for free.
Right.
Or we, work with other services and such that they may want to look at.
Yeah, that's one of the critical pieces is because when you think, okay, we're finally ready, I made a decision with my girlfriend. We decided, hey, it's time to move up. We're going to do this. By the time we thought we're ready, it took a year just to identify a property that we could get. We found one, the deal fall through. And now we can't get that house. It took a year just to zero in on the right property. So all that time we could have been getting our ducks in a row financially. We could have met with Scott, could have talked about what's out there. Be flexible and be ready because there's going to be changes as you look for the place.
And sometimes it's something simple. I've had clients that, have needed to pay off a $50 medical collection and then their score shoots up 40 points.
Right.
And that's something that we can make happen in a matter of a few days, which is wonderful. If there's an error there, we can identify and get it taken care of.
And you won't know until you investigate these things, guys.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. You got to get out there and see what's in the market and what you can afford. Like I said, Scott has programs for everyone. The veteran thing is unbelievable.
Absolutely. I mean, the veterans, it's one of the best ways that we can give back to them. Obviously, I might be a little biased being in in this industry, but at the same time, I feel like giving them the opportunity to go into a property with basically no money out of pocket because we can negotiate with the seller to pick up closing costs. I have clients that walk away with their security, with their escrow.
What a
deposit
great deal! I mean, that is awesome. That's really something that we're doing right. The first responders and the military guys. That's a big help to them, and I hope they're taking advantage of that. If you're out there and you're listening and you think, I didn't even realize that, or I'm renting a property now. Man, look into this because it's a great situation for you.
And they're very flexible in the credit, guidelines as far as that's concerned, and we can help those veterans kind of navigate all that. Really, our team picks up the reins and does everything for you.
Right.
We just need a little bit of information from you up front, and we take care of everything from there. We make it super easy.
Scott Kepler, Mortgage Approval Group. Give them a call. What's the best way to get in touch with you, Scott?
Yeah, phone is 813-444-8537. Or you can visit us online at mortgageapprovalgroup.com or scottkepler.com.
If you're a renter out there and you're not sure whether you can afford to own a home, let's find out. It's not going to hurt you to give Scott a call and find out what you can really do.
Absolutely.
Part of the generation of younger folks, they say, aren't buying homes. Have you seen a change in that, or have you seen buyers approach you at different ages?
I'm seeing more and more millennials over the last couple of years. I think that a lot of them are staying at home longer and saving up money because they have money to put down, typically because they've been living with, mom and dad.
That's the way to do it if you can get away with that.
Sure. I mean, I guess, I've joked on here on the show before, if you're a parent and you're listening and you've got a millennial living at home, we allow for gift funds to, help with the down payment.
Just got to ease them out of there.
If that's what you want to do, But yeah, I see a lot of millennials, first-time home buyers coming in, and they've taken the time to educate themselves, and they reach out, and I have some that are come to me already kind of pre-educated based on their research and ready to roll with down payments and have an idea of what's available, and we can have an intelligent discussion, and some that need some more hand-holding, and we're happy to help everybody.
Scott Kepler, Mortgage Approval Group. Let's get in touch with Scott and find out what he can do for you. When we come back, we're going to talk about refi a little bit, about investors, different things they can do on that side. And we got Richard Alexander Law is going to tell us a little bit about his students and what's going on in class over there. Stay with us. Consumer Quarterback Show rolls on.
Thanks for listening to My Daddy's Show. For more information, go to consumerqb.com.
To get in touch with Brandon, call 813-670-7372. Online at consumerqb.com.
This is the Cannabis Podcast, powered by True Leaf on Radio Influence. It's an inside look and the scientific facts in and around the world of medical cannabis. Now, here is your host, Ian Beckles.
He's a successful entrepreneur, published author, top listing agent, a real estate and finance expert that goes to bat for you every day as a consumer advocate. Your host and the consumer quarterback, Brandon Rhymes. You're listening to the consumer quarterback, Brandon Rhymes, cutting through your typical media nonsense and offering you a rational and unbiased perspective on current events and life in Tampa Bay. Online at consumerqb.com.
That's right, consumerqb.com, where you can find all our partners, all the folks we've vetted and got together for you to try to save you some steps when you're out there purchasing and using your money in the marketplace. We had a little conversation with Scott Kepler there from Mortgage Approval Group about some of the things that renters don't realize, some of the programs out there that they can take advantage of. I want to turn now to Richard Alexander Law. We talked a little bit about, when Richard comes on, about changes in legislation, maybe DUI, that kind of thing. We had a conversation, though, about students. He's a teacher, and I wanted to know what students are thinking out there, or why they get into it. And then that sparked this interest in television and radio, because a lot of us think that we've seen Law and Order episodes and we're prepared in the event that we get into a situation. That plays out in real life, I'm sure, all the time, where someone says, oh, no, I know the law here.
Actually, you prompted me, because it reminded me of something. You mentioned 12 Angry Men.
Right.
Henry Fonda, on obviously the star of that show. And that's a very unique movie. It's one of my favorites because the entire movie takes place in the jury deliberation room. And, you know, Henry Fonda's the lone holdout. It's a 12-person jury because the charge is a first-degree murder. And it's an amazing way, an hour and a half of just to see how he talks. And at the end of the movie, he ends up doing a better job than the defense attorney.
I don't know how many of you folks out there have had jury duty, but it generally is something nobody wants. So
Wow.
the idea that we're going to learn about what goes on and understand our process, the judicial process, most of us don't really want to do that. When we get that letter or we get told that we have to show up, we're trying to duck it or get out of there. It's a chance to really learn how this thing works.
Yeah, it really is. You know, it's unfortunate that because I'm an attorney, I'll never be picked to be on a jury. I will get excused immediately.
Right.
You know, and I can say for myself that when I pick a jury, I don't want a lawyer on there either, because what tends to happen is the other members of the jury defer a great deal of power and influence to that attorney. And that's not necessarily true. You may not have a trial lawyer.
I see what you're saying. So the composition of the jury, you got to consider who's going to be the leading voice in that room when you
have to pick a four-person, correct, as soon as the jury deliberation starts.
And if that person had a background in the law or felt like they had a law, they would be giving direction. And that's not really the role.
Wouldn't you? Yeah.
Right.
I mean, wouldn't you say, well, wait a minute. Hey, you're a lawyer, right? I remember that. Yeah. Do you want to be the foreperson? Sure. And then they'll defer way too much power and influence to that person.
And that's the whole concept behind it. We want a jury of peers. We want everyone's influence, right?
Right. That's exactly what it is. You know, you're supposed to. Some judges will not let jurors take notes. Some judges will. It depends on the judge. But because they don't want you relying on what that person wrote in order to make a decision. Maybe the person wrote down something incorrectly. Maybe the person has a built-in bias that you don't know about. And they don't want you relying on someone else's notes.
Interesting.
So judges are very peculiar about note-taking during the trial.
So, Richard, as an attorney during jury selection, you're trying to figure out whether they're empathetic to your client. I mean, what is actually going on there when you're trying to make those decisions about what jury members you want?
Well, it's called voir dire, okay, and it means to speak the truth. That's really what it means. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to find 6 individuals. For the most part, you're not going to get a 12-person jury unless it's a capital case. But you're trying to find 6 individuals that will be fair and impartial. And that's really what, at the end of the day, you're just trying to find 6 people that will hear both sides fairly, equally, and then weigh the evidence, depending if it's a civil case or a criminal case, and then come to a decision. And that's really what it's all about. But voir dire can be a fairly complicated process.
I could imagine it's not necessarily balanced. You don't want elderly and young or male and female. It's about their views. So you're trying to ask questions to find out what their views are, their opinions?
Yeah, and again, this is where the judge comes in, because some judges have a questionnaire and they have it fill it out prior to them coming in. Or some judges will ask some preliminary questions and then let the lawyers take over. Or some judges will let the lawyers do all the work. So it really depends on the judge, and this is where they can have considerable influence on that process, the jury selection process, because what you're trying to find out is who's going to cooperate with other people,
right? Who's
open-minded, who's had, let's say, maybe a member of their family has been a victim of a crime, has been a victim of a car accident, because they're going to carry that into the deliberation room, and they're going to carry a built-in bias whether you know it or not. It's going to happen. who's members of the family are law enforcement officers, first responders as family members.
And as a way of researching that information, how would you go about finding out that information?
Well, you can't, because you don't know who's going to come into the room.
I see.
So if you don't ask it during voir dire, it's which way.
So that is your only opportunity to depose them at that point.
That is the only opportunity you can actually speak to these people as private citizens.
Okay.
And that's why it's so critical to be prepared with questions. And this is the time you get the chance, if you want to have a conversation with them. I'm going to put the words informal in quotes, because you really got to talk a little bit about why you're here. But the questions better be revolve around the impartiality, being unbiased. How do you feel about, because if you have if you know it's an alcohol-related case, you better ask questions about how do you feel about alcohol.
Right.
Because if they say, I think everybody that drinks alcohol is guilty, you probably don't want that person on the jury if you're a defense
I think
attorney.
I just fell into the Law and Order trap that we discussed a little earlier, because I swore that attorneys had private investigators finding out what the jury members' inclinations were prior to the jury selection. Why would I that's just I just thought that, I thought, well, I know that from TV.
Look, here's the thing. Is it possible? I guess anything's possible, but I don't know who's coming into the
jury pool.
The jury pool, right? Because let's say they'll ask for 24 people. The judge will call down 24 people. Of those 24, you pick 6. 7. The alternate.
Right.
Whoever's not picked goes back into the jury pool. For other attorneys, other judges. So I have no idea who's coming through those doors.
That's another way to ensure fairness. It makes sense now that I think about it.
Is there a way to find out? I guess you can look through all the summons that were issued by the clerk and find out who's coming in.
Boy, but that time is not great, because they just walked in the door.
Correct.
So that's not going to give you much opportunity.
Right. So, but look, I'm just saying, there's a lot of people with a lot of money, and could they make that happen? I'm pretty sure they can.
I suppose it's possible. Now, tell us about DUI legislation. That's another thing where people out there think they know, here's what you do. If you've had one drink, fine, do everything. If you've had none, they have a plan. But it turns out that's not always the way it works in real life.
Well, DUI legislation in the state of Florida has been fairly quiet as of recently. We've had changes in the laws recently as far as 0.15, that's an aggravator.
The limits.
Right, it's an aggravator. You get doubled fine, and you have to get the ignition interlock device, mandatory. And I recently wrote a blog, and I talked about this some time ago on the show, that Utah went down to a 0.05. And why is that important is because Utah was also the first state to go to a 0.08. And now 0.08 is the standard.
Okay.
So I don't know if we're headed that way. I will say MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, is an extremely powerful lobby in the state of Florida.
Has Utah seen a spike in cases as a result of the change?
What I have seen more of is more marijuana-related cases. No kidding.
I'm curious to know how that's handled now, with cannabis being, recreational in some areas of the country and not in others, and medicinal in some. It's going to be on law. First of all, law enforcement must have a real serious task in determining which one of these devices is. I see kids with vaping you can't tell what the product is or what they're using. So I wonder, law enforcement's a real challenge ahead of it with this vaping.
Look, I can say this, that marijuana has a very distinctive smell. And the smell has been held to be probable cause.
PC for an officer.
Correct. So if an officer smells that, an officer should be trained, obviously.
Right.
But if they smell that, then, they can go forward with a criminal investigation, which would be a DUI case. But, it's a case-by-case basis. There's a tremendous amount of pressure on law enforcement to do DUI cases, to make arrests and investigations. Again, MAD is an extremely powerful lobby. The state attorney's office is very aggressive when it comes to prosecuting DUI cases, to the point they won't dump them at all. They'll amend them to reckless drivings, but they will not drop DUI cases.
But with the sophistication of the devices for vaporizing, and then the phone and the texting thing that we're talking about with some of the technology, voice to text, and there's kind of a fine line to decide what the driver is actually doing at the time, and whether the police officer can say with 100% certainty, I saw him do X, Y, and Z with his phone, or he was doing this or that inside the vehicle.
Well, that's what I was talking about the last time I was here, that now that texting and driving is a primary offense, let's just say, for instance, law enforcement pulls you over because he believes, he witnessed a traffic violation, in this case, texting and driving.
Right.
So he pulls you over, and, we talked about this, that, you can't get into the phone because of the U.S. Supreme Court ruling on needing a warrant.
So he can't just grab your phone and look at it.
Correct. So what happens? Well, while he pulls you over for a primary offense of texting and driving, he picks up probable cause for something else. And
so
now
opens the door to another opportunity.
Exactly. It opens the Pandora's box, if you will, and now you have a full-blown investigation for something else.
Okay, we're coming into our hard break here. I just want to tell you, Richard's going to come back. We're going to discuss a little bit more about that. It's an intriguing topic. I wanted some more questions to hit on that. And we got Scott talking about refi and rent versus own. Come back, Consumer Quarterback Show. We're always going to tell you something positive as well. We got a woman who was waiting in line at the grocery store. A nightmare scenario. She's got her kids with her. She gets all the way up to the checkout line, and she finds out the check she has is bad, or she can't use it. We're going to tell you what happens. Don't worry, it's going to be a good ending, as it always is on the story, feel-good story of the day. Come on back. Consumer Quarterback Show, consumerqb.com.
This is Chris Voss, former FBI lead hostage negotiator and owner of the Black Swan Group, and you're listening to Consumer Quarterback Show, hosted by my friend Brandon Rives.
To get in touch with Brandon, call 813-670-7372. Online at consumerqb.com.
This is the Cannabis Podcast, powered by Trulieve on Radio Influence. It's an inside look and the scientific facts in and around the world of medical cannabis. Now, here is your host, Ian Beckles.
He's a successful entrepreneur, published author, top listing agent, a real estate and finance expert that goes to bat for you every day as a consumer advocate. Your host and the consumer quarterback, Brandon Rimes. listening to the Consumer Quarterback, Brandon Rhymes, online at consumerqb.com. Brandon is Tampa Bay's #1 consumer advocate for real estate and financial advice. Call Brandon today at 813-670-7372.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Consumer Quarterback Show with your host, Brandon Rhymes. Brandon is out today. You got your backup quarterback, James DeJerome, in the chair. We are committed to providing you the same consumer advocacy program. We're going to provide some knowledge and some information. To that end, I've assembled some great partners for you. Scott Kepler from Mortgage Approval Group has visited with us a little bit, and we just finished talking to Richard Alexander about some of the different things he's seeing out there. I wanted to go back to Scott a little bit because we had mentioned refinance, and we got a lot of people putting pressure on, as if our market didn't have a scarcity already. We've got a lot of folks from out of our state coming down, always looking for an opportunity to invest down here. What can you tell us about refinance, and what can you do for those looking to refinance?
Sure. Those homeowners that are out there now that, have a higher interest rate or have mortgage insurance, or what I've been doing a lot of is renovation loans.
Okay.
People see that they've built up some equity in their home. They've lived in it for, 6 months or a year, or we can do it as a purchase as well.
Mm-hmm.
But, they see that they want to, update the kitchen, or, do new flooring or add a bathroom, those kind of things. We have had a lot of folks in the process of doing that, where they'll add the renovation costs to their, existing mortgage and refinance it into one mortgage.
When you're going to do one of those deals, is there a certain percentage you're looking for, Scott? Like when the homeowner says, well, I built up X amount of equity in the home, that means we're in a position where it makes sense. Is there a way to look at it that way?
Well, it's really based on the future value of the property after the repairs or renovations are done.
So you've got to consider the value you're adding.
Correct. Yeah, correct. In some cases, you purchased a house that, maybe was outdated, so you paid $20,000 less than one that had already been renovated, and in that case, once you figure those renovations is done, then the house is going to be worth $20,000 more.
Does it make sense for folks out there, as soon as they see the interest rate drop, to refinance? Do you get people run to you all the time for half a point or a point?
It only does if it's going to pay off in the long run. It depends on how long you're going to be in the house. If you told me you were going to sell the house next year, I would tell you it probably wouldn't make sense to refinance, because there's closing costs involved. You can either have them built into the interest rate, or you can take them from your equity, or you can pay them out of pocket. But either way, there's a cost associated one way or the other. And so we look at all the different options and kind of, break that down based on the main factor being, how long are you planning on being in this house, and what are you going to do with it?
See, there's an example, folks, of Scott seeing something that just didn't occur to me. What I'm thinking about is, I've built up value. I've been in this house for 10 years or whatever. I've got X amount of dollars over the cost. I've paid off my mortgage over the cost of what I'm going to get. I want to take that money right now and do something with it. But you've got to have favorable terms, or you're going to build yourself in a payment that's in excess of what you're already paying.
Absolutely. If you're talking about taking cash out of your equity and you have a purpose that you're going to use it for, some cases that makes sense just because of whatever your purpose is. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's throw your
start
daughter
a business
a dream wedding,
or
start a business, or invest in another property, or whatever the case may be. Pay off some debts that have got
It justifies that
over
additional
your
expense.
budget. You can justify that initial expense with the other goal that you're accomplishing, and that's where it's up to you personally to decide, if it makes sense. I can just show you the math.
As a homeowner, and when you're out there considering whether you're to take this step or not, when you're going to go to somebody, a lender, and they're going to evaluate you, are there ways that you can make the property seem more valuable? I guess we were talking about appraisal or that kind of thing, but it just occurred to me that I'm seeking to take equity out of the home that I've built up. You're going to assess the value of the home at a certain value now, and then we're going to try to assess the value after the renovations are done.
Correct. If you're looking at just a standard refinance, we look at what the value of the home is based on its current condition. When you're doing a renovation and you're including that into either a purchase or a refinance, we look at how much is the home worth now, how much are the renovation costs going to be, what's that add up to, and how's that compared to what we think the house will be valued at after that work is done.
How does that work for you, Scott? Do you find yourself working with appraisers or anyone? I mean, how do you get a feel for what makes sense for you from a business standpoint?
So we have several different software programs that we use, and that are the different lending partners use to determine a rough value based on what the computer says a comparable property is. But we usually are dealing with ranges, and in some cases we know the neighborhood better than others.
I was just going to say, this is where being a local comes in a huge way, because you got to know the market and where it's headed.
Yeah, because I can tell you now, a 1,000 square foot house in Seminole Heights doesn't sell for the same thing as a 1,000 square foot house in Hyde Park.
And where will it be in 5 years?
Exactly.
So the ability to forecast these things and to have long-term vision, that's why you need somebody local in the market. That's why we're telling you to go to Scott, because he's been here, so he knows what he's talking about. Plus, he's got this team in place that already has doing this day by day in the same market.
Absolutely. Yeah, and my team runs, like a well-oiled machine. We take loans from, start to finish, and we're typically, clear to close and ready to have everything done well ahead of the closing date, and that just lowers everybody's stress level and makes the experience of buying a house, especially your first one, much more simple. And
we're talking about the whole Bay Area, Scott, specifically what's your range?
We do anything in Florida, really, but a majority of our business, probably about 90% of our business, is done in Hillsborough, Pinellas, Pasco, Manatee, Sarasota.
I know you guys keep an eye on the market all the time. When Brandon's here, you guys visit a lot about where we're headed. Anything you see interest rate wise, or anything that's impacting you and your business that you can see predicting the next few months?
Well, I mean, the Fed just lowered the interest rate for the Fed rate, which, as a reminder to everybody out there, doesn't normally have a direct impact on mortgage rates.
Could you just briefly explain that to me just a second?
So the Fed rate is what the banks borrow money at from the Federal Reserve, and then they have their markup on it, and everybody kind of comes out with their credit card terms and their banking terms and their as far as lending products go, and personal loans and car loans and things.
But my individual rate is determined in another way.
Your individual rate is determined by the Fed calculating a rate based on typically a prime rate, which is impacted by the Fed rate as well. But that means that, like, if you're on a revolving term, meaning your interest rate can go up and down on a line of credit for example, that rate is probably going to be lower next billing period than it was
because
the
of
last
this change in the federal rate.
Correct. But what it does impact is the rest of the market. The market was prepared for a cut, but I think the cut was more than what they anticipated, and you saw that the stock market kind of took a nosedive earlier this week and last week because of the announcement that was made last week. And what that does is, shifts a lot of the big money over to something that's a little bit more secure, like a 30-year fixed rate mortgage bond. And so, therefore, the mortgage bonds go up, and that brings the interest rates actually down.
So anytime there's instability, folks want something they can count on. They're a little nervous about putting their money into something risky.
Right, and so they'll move it over to mortgage bonds, and that helps bring the interest rates down.
Gotcha.
So, when your stock market account, your stock account and such is doing really well, chances are mortgage rates are probably climbing up too.
Gotcha.
So if it's doing a little worse, but that's where there was kind of a shock in them, the Fed deciding to lower the interest rate, because they're trying to just kind of poke the market to flame up even more than it has.
Gotcha. And then, like we talk all the time about the difference between our market and somewhere else in the United States, it's about the unique factors here in the Bay Area. So our opportunities purchase-wise, the locations in our state, then the comps around the state, and then, of course, it's so hard to find property now because we're just not enough out there for everybody that wants to buy. Right. What can folks do that are renting that want to get in touch with you to find out how they can see what they can really buy?
Well, it's simple. They can either call or text. The number is 813-444-8537. Or they can visit us online at scottkepler.com or mortgageapprovalgroup.com. Reach out that way, or call the office. We're happy to, assist and, kind of learn about what your goals are and where you're at now, and, see what we can do to help you accomplish them.
Exactly, because you're making a financial commitment whether you're renting or owning. I mean, if you're renting, like we talked about, first and last, and that your name on that lease, it's a commitment financially that you could be making to purchase your own home.
Absolutely. People get all caught up on, well, maybe I'll wait for the interest rates to go down a little bit. But rent is 100% interest. Everything you pay, you're throwing away. You're never going to get it back. We were talking about veterans being able to buy a house with no money down.
Right.
And, them being able to start building equity off of that investment, where they're using a benefit. But it's the same for everybody. When you purchase a house, that house is going to start appreciating right away. And that's why we're having these conversations about, refinances. These folks have not paid down their houses in a lot of cases, thousands and thousands of dollars, they're still owe a high percentage in most cases of what they originally borrowed.
Right. So they're just paying interest at this point.
They're still paying interest, but because their house is appreciated and interest rates have dropped, they could be paying a lot less interest or keep the same payment that they're comfortable with and cut their term down. I've got a lot of people doing that right now.
Scott Kepler, Mortgage Approval Group. He's got tons of options for you, and most importantly, he knows the Bay Area. So find somebody like Scott who can help you out, listen to your questions, and give you an idea of what's out there for you, because until you investigate the situation, you really don't know. We're coming into a break. We're going to come back with our feel-good story. We're going to talk to the guys one more time with some summary of some of their thoughts today. Great show. Stay with us. Consumer Quarterback Show, consumerqb.com.
Hey, I'm Ken Shamrock, and you're here with Consumer Quarterback Show. And I say, Brandon Rhymes, knock out your competition.
To get in touch with Brandon, call 813-670-7372. Online at consumerqb.com. Ian Beckle that goes to bat for you every day as a consumer advocate. Your host and the consumer quarterback, Brandon Rhymes. You're listening to the consumer quarterback, Brandon Rhymes, cutting through your typical media nonsense and offering you a rational and unbiased perspective on current events and life in Tampa Bay. Online at consumerqb.com.
All right, we're back with the Consumer Quarterback Show. Brandon Rhymes is not here today. Your backup quarterback, James DeJerome, is in the chair. We're going to tell you something good like Brandon always does. One of the things he makes a point of on this program is injecting some positivity into your day. And to that end, I found a story here about a gal that was in line at a supermarket with her kids and found out that she didn't have the checks that she had to pay for her grocery bill was not accepted by the cashier. So her name is Regan Gamble, an employee at Concho Valley Home for Girls and Children's Emergency Shelter. She was in line to pick up some items for the girls at the shelter when she found out that her check had an error and could not be accepted by the store. There was a mistake made on the check. We had shopped about an hour to get enough groceries to feed the entire group of children, and we had about a week's worth of meals in the cart, and then we couldn't get through the line. So that's when a customer stepped up from behind and said, "Don't worry, I'm going to handle that." She pulled out her debit card, insisted that she would pay the $160 bill. The woman told Gamble that she had been in a similar situation herself and was happy to help the foster care organization. The kind gesture left an impression on the two girls who were there with their mentor as they watched the lady pay for their groceries. The kids were shocked, Gamble said. One later said she never saw someone do that before. She didn't think about that anyone would ever do that. Gamble said both teens who had been taken out of abusive situations at home began discussing ways they could repay the stranger's kindness by doing something nice for others in return. The next time we go somewhere, if we see someone struggling with groceries, we can help load the car or put them in the basket. We're going to figure out some way to help them. If we can't pay for it, we'll help them some other way. So what that did is it sparked a little bit of that pay it forward mentality that we talk about a lot on the show, where you witness a random act of kindness or somebody doing something good for somebody else, and it inspires you to do the same. And that's the whole thing, that the impetus behind this story and the impetus that we're trying to get out there in the community is, let's take action. Let's take action, and let's reward those who do. You see a good deed, don't let it go unrewarded. That way you'll reinforce it and kind of pay it forward yourself. Absolutely. All right, guys. So we had talked a little bit today about some different items. I wanted to go back to Richard a little bit because I was kind of fascinated by the students and the teaching and some of the ways that we in the public think we know already what the laws are. We're confident because we've seen a television program or a movie somewhere that reinforced our view. What have you seen out there that you've noticed that people are way off base? They think that they can do this and there's no legal basis for that.
Well, you actually made me think of something called, have you ever heard of the sovereign citizen argument?
I think I'm familiar with the phrase, but I don't know exactly what it is.
Well, they're dangerous, and I'll tell you why. They come to court, and they're armed to the teeth with, research that they've done on any particular case. And they believe that the government, the state, local municipality, judges, law enforcement, has no power and jurisdiction over them because they believe themselves to be sovereign. That means free and independent of any government control whatsoever.
And what establishes this sovereignty?
Well, they see themselves as sovereign citizens, and they say, well, not even the Constitution applies to
They don't
you.
recognize it.
Correct. And that's their first argument in front of the court. I love when they do something like, well, I don't recognize this judge's jurisdiction over me. And that's when a lot of the lawyers go, this is going to be good. This is going to be really good.
Well, how does the judge typically respond?
Well, he doesn't even consider it. He just says, we're going to set this off for a pretrial. I'm going to appoint the public defender to represent you. I mean, judges are way beyond that. They just know not to get into it. It's a lose-lose game for the judges because they're just going to get into a
back and forth.
Heated discourse, with the person accused. So they know better than to get into that. But I think a lot of it has to do with they think they know the law. And they come in with what's called the sovereign citizen argument, which is always fails.
You've seen this presented.
Numerous times, absolutely.
And this person had done research at some library or somewhere and felt like this just applies to me, or there's no formal declaration issued.
Correct. That's exactly right. They feel that they're going way back. I mean, talking 18th century.
Is there such a loophole that says if I choose to accede from the process?
Of course not. No, the states can't do it. I don't know why an individual thinks. But the bottom line is they believe that it never applied to them in the first place.
Okay.
That the laws don't apply to them as enacted.
There's a lot of folks out there who just feel that the federal government, they have issues with the federal government. For the state versus federal, kind of like an argument. I suppose you could make that argument, but there's no legal basis.
Well, there's no legal basis. That's the problem with it. So, I think the ultimate irony is I'm going to use case law to show that the sovereign citizen argument applies to me. Okay, you do that. And who hands down case law?
Right. I mean,
judges.
So one way or another, you end up back where you started.
You end up back where you started, but they don't see it that way. I remember Wesley Snipes. Remember he was convicted for tax fraud?
Yeah.
He said he attended a seminar in which the speaker convinced him he doesn't have to pay taxes because it doesn't apply to him and Congress has no power over taxes. And since he's a sovereign citizen, he doesn't have to pay taxes. And lo and behold, he gets convicted and sent up to federal prison.
Yeah, I imagine that argument didn't last very long. I don't think they deliberated that long.
Yeah.
See, on the tax thing, it just looks like you're stealing, basically. You know, it looks like you just don't want to pay your taxes. If you took a philosophical stand against some issue that put you in a light where you were actually doing something, or it wasn't just you not spending your own money, it might have, there might be a way to at least argue a little bit.
Right, like I don't want my money going to the gestation period of a housefly. Right, yeah.
Something along those lines. But just to say, I'm exempt. That's
exactly right. Because the speaker at a seminar told me I was.
So, what is it typically that students? I'm sure nowadays I get this all the time. That I'm stunned at some of the positions they'll take. But have you had this come up in class where they'll say, I really feel that this is wrong, or we need to change this because I've had an experience that runs counter to this. The law's been in place for years and years and years, but they feel like, hey, time for a change?
See, now you don't know this, but the timing of that question is really scary, because the second question I get asked most as an instructor, as a teacher, is about the school shootings.
Is that right?
Yeah, and we just had one. We had two recently,
right.
That happened literally within the past 48 hours.
What specifically?
Well, they want to know my interpretation of what I think should be done. And they said, do I think it's fair? Do I think it's proper what's going on? And what I do to them, I said, listen, let me give you a little bit of history lesson. When I was a kid, and I grew up in the 60s, 70s, and I said when I was a kid, the big thing was not school shootings. You know what the big thing was when I was a kid?
You're talking about domestic terror?
Nuclear war.
Oh, yeah.
Remember duck and
the
cover?
Cold War, yeah,
right?
Under your
Remember
desk
that?
or whatever.
If you see a mushroom cloud outside your window, if you see a mushroom cloud outside your window, you're dead.
Right.
But that was the big thing, how to calm and keep kids, quiet. Hey, let's go through the drill. Get under your desk. Put your heads over your hand.
It is kind of unbelievable to think there was in facing annihilation, we had a drill. They would go through 20 minutes of moving the classroom kids around and setting them. It's a nuclear bomb.
But it was a way to keep the kids calm and not be afraid to go home and come to class the next day.
So we're taking steps.
So it worked. But that was the big scare back in the 60s and the 70s, nuclear war. It's not that anymore. Now it's school shootings. So what is the solution? I think the solution is training and knowledge. And, my school, both my colleges have active shooter drills for the instructors.
Yeah, you need to have a plan. That's for sure.
Exactly. What to do when there's an active shooter on campus. Because that's the new norm.
We had Thomas King from Florida Firearms Academy in here a while back.
I know of him. He's a professional.
And we had a story where these folks that were survivors of the Country Music Festival in Las Vegas, where they had an active shooter situation, they formed a support group online. They get together every once in a while. They pick an event. They picked the Garlic Festival in California, and we're at a second shooting. The guy pulls out. Can you imagine that you've been at two separate public events where a mass shooting occurred in less than 3 years?
The odds. Yeah. It's like surviving 2 plane crashes. Right.
So it's coming to your door, so you better have a plan. I mean, you don't want to be an alarmist about this thing, but how could you be unprepared at this point? You'd feel like it was your fault almost. It's out there.
I'm a big believer in having, actively either prior, retired law enforcement, retired security, top security at the school campuses, the elementary schools, the middle schools, the high schools. Have people that want to be trained. It's a 100-hour course, by the way, I believe. And have them on campus. Have the deputy's car outside. Be
a presence,
a deterrent. Yeah. To saying, not that school. Let me go on. Why do you have locks on your door? To say, well, I'm not. The door's locked. Let me try the next door. I just think the training, knowledge, and experience is invaluable as to prevent.
It's always going to be the key: education and knowledge, just like we talk about here on the show all the time. Boy, that's what empowers you as a consumer. I want to go back, Scott. Any summary as we get ready to close the show up here? I want you to give out your information one more time about how folks can get in touch with you, and tell me a little bit about what's going on over at Mortgage Approval Group.
Well, we've been talking a lot about rates. Obviously, is a big conversation in the whole process of mortgages, and We've been at a 2-year low for a while. We actually hit a 3-year low last week. So
might be a good time.
Yeah, to me it is. I think we're going to see them hold pretty steady, for a little while, anyways. But that doesn't mean you should drag your feet and take your time if you're thinking about doing something.
I'm telling you, the process takes a while, so start it now so you're ready to go when you really need to.
Yep. If you're ready to buy, or want to at least consider buying, reach out to my team. If you're thinking of doing a renovation or a refinance and want to at least look at your options, there's no cost to see what your options
Scott Kepler, Mortgage Approval Group.
You got it.
Richard Alexander, tell me something. What's going on? How do people get in touch with you?
I'm about as social media as you can possibly get.
All right.
I have Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. I mean,
there you go.
I'm incredibly accessible.
Richard Alexander Law shared a bunch of good stuff with us today. Scott Kepler, Mortgage Approval Group. As always, the Consumer Quarterback Show did its best to try to provide some knowledge for you. Check us out online, watch us on TV, listen to us on the radio, and get some power out there. Become a more empowered consumer and make better decisions in the marketplace. Thanks for listening to the Consumer Quarterback Show, consumerqb.com.
You've been listening to The Consumer Quarterback, Brandon Rhymes. Whether it's real estate, consumer, or financial advice, let Brandon call your next play. Contact Brandon Rhymes at 813-670-7372. That's 813-670-7372. Online at consumerqb.com. And join us next time for The Consumer Quarterback Show, weekday afternoons at 5 on AM 1380.
Are you a real estate agent looking to take your business to the next level and supercharge your marketing? Hi, I'm Brandon Rhymes, owner of Platinum MVP Realty and host of the Real Estate Quarterback Show, syndicated radio and TV show talk program on iHeartRadio, 1025 The Bone, daily 5 o'clock drive time on 1380 The Biz, and our TV show is on WeBeam TV. We're looking for real estate agents that want to join our team and supercharge their marketing utilizing some of our innovative strategies. We utilize the Real Geeks platform, Facebook marketing, internet marketing, and a lot of the traditional methods as well. Postcard mailers mailed for you, postage, signage, business cards, all paid for by the company. Aggressive real estate splits and ways to help you win in any marketplace. We need you to go out, take applications, and work our plethora of leads that we're generating on a daily basis. Reach out by clicking the form below, and we'd love to have a confidential interview with you.